to talk to us about Portal, the next generation transportation data archive.
Should be on now. Okay. Okay, thank you all for coming today. I have a little presentation for you today on Portal, which is our regional transportation data archive. Spend a little time telling you about the motivation for Portal, the current state of Portal, what data we have, what our web interface looks like. And then for the last part of the talk, I'll tell you about some stuff that we're working on and that we anticipate to incorporate in the future. Okay. So Portal is the official regional data archive for the Portland-Vancouver metropolitan region. And Portal receives funding both from Portland area sources as well as Vancouver area sources and a number of grants from OTREC and other types of funding organizations. So why do we want this data archive? What's the purpose of doing the data archive? So we've got all this transportation data being collected all over the city, all over the region. And we're archiving at Portal, making it accessible to regional transportation planners and operations personnel. And one of the big reasons behind this, the first bullet says we're going to build a performance-based long-range transportation plan. So there's a huge new emphasis at the federal highways level on performance measures, and they really want to be able to understand what is the benefit of a particular improvement and to show a before and an after effect of a particular improvement. A lot of improvements, I work a lot with the ITS group here in town, and a lot of improvements are add a lane, or add some new type of physical infrastructure. But we're also working a lot on let's do some operational improvements. Can we retime the signals? Can we add some information on the freeways? And the benefits of those types of improvements have been traditionally very difficult to measure. So one of our goals with this archive is to give us a platform for measuring the benefits of such improvements. And it's important to archive the data so that we have a long historical record over which to keep track of the data. There's a clock. Okay. Okay. The regional archive is funded and supported a lot by a company or a group called Transport. Transport is a group of local transportation agencies representing people from Metro, from the Department of Transportation, from the cities, from the counties, as well as some private firms, and then Portland State also is part of this group. And this group is coordinating together to implement these ITS type improvements. Not physical infrastructure, again, system and management types improvements. One thing that we've done as part of this transport group is to build an ITS network. So we have actual fiber that connects all these agencies, and the fiber is now being extended up into the Vancouver region so that we can communicate data in a secure and effective way between these agencies. This is important. It's something we do in Portland. I'm not sure that a lot of other cities and metropolitan areas have the communication and coordination that we do to pull off both either the Transport Coordinating Committee or the ITS network. Okay, so I'll talk to you a little bit about Portal. Like I said, it's the official transportation data archive for the Portland-Vancouver metropolitan region. It was established in 2004. 2004, we had one little data feed and a very small website. Now we have about a terabyte of transportation-related data. And it's really key to understand there's two pieces. There is the data, and there's the website, which allows access to that data. We have a wide variety of data, freeway data, transit data, weather, incident, freight, traffic counts, different types of data. That data is available both through the website and by directly accessing our database, and we use it in both ways. The website is more publicly available. At the ITS lab, we use the data directly for research and so on and so forth. It's used widely. Local operations and other transportation professionals use it. Occasionally we get calls from the news media. I think there was an article that showed up just even a couple weeks ago again using portal data. It's used in the Metro uses it in their regional transportation plan, and portal is being used as a backbone of transportation system management and operations both in Portland and Vancouver. Transportation system management operations, TSMO, I guess this is a newish phrase. To me, it simply means let's try and manage the freeways better, and let's try and manage the freeways better through operational improvements. Let's not always have to make physical improvements. Okay. There is this consistent issue in transportation as well as many other fields where we have a lot of raw data, and what we want out of the data is information. So we're going to take data in Portal, we're going to take raw data, we're going to try and add contextual information, and then make visualizations that can give you or other transportation professionals information. Because the data by itself often is typically not very interesting. Or it's not that it's not interesting, it's just that it's very difficult to derive information out of the data. This is just a quick listing of the data sources we have in Portal. We get loop detector data from Oregon Department of Transportation and Washington Department of Transportation, speed, volume, and occupancy at a 20-second granularity. We get incidents of two types. We get it from the Oregon Department of Transportation Management and Operations Center, as well as we get statewide crash data. Although technically the statewide crash data isn't in Portal yet, we hope to incorporate that soon. Weather data, transit data, we currently have data from TriMet. We'll be getting data from C-Tran up in Vancouver soon. We just recently got access to City of Portland arterial signal data. We are expecting that from Vancouver also, and some freight data. Okay. So that's a summary of the data sources. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the web interface to Portal. So when Portal was initially started, we developed a web interface. But about 2 years ago, we decided to rewrite that web interface, and we developed a new interface that we hope is more usable and more intuitive. One of the big challenges in writing such a web interface is that we really have a wide variety of users. We have people like you, the researchers, who really want access to the detailed data, and you want every last piece of the raw data, and you don't want it necessarily cleaned. You just want the raw data. We have planners who are trying to, planners who wish to forecast what may be happening in the future or look at historical trends. So they want a long history of data. And we have traffic managers who may want a current snapshot. And if a traffic manager's desire for data is very different from a researcher. A traffic manager is maybe give me your best guess as to what's going on right now, whereas a researcher really wants a raw data. So in designing this, our principles were let's make it intuitive, let's make it interactive, and make it user-driven. And I really want the interface to be graphical. Maps are, I find that people react very, very well to maps. And a principle that you'll see as we go through the pages is when you come to an entry page, you should get a good set of defaults. You should get something interesting right off the top of the bat, and then you should be able to drill down and get the more detailed information as you need it. So a good set of defaults, and then the ability to drill down as needed. So this is a snapshot of the Portal homepage. And on the left-hand side here, we have live traffic speeds. And on the right-hand side is a 15-minute average over the last 5 weekdays. So you're comparing current speeds to historical. So this is a benefit of the archive. We're not trying to be the ODOT speed map. We're not trying to give only current information, but we want to give current information in a historical context. So we have live compared with historical here. I was just asked a question. Well, you have the live and you have the historical. Why don't you show the difference? So I guess this is a question that I would pose to the traffic people out there. If we have live speed on the map. We have historical speed. We could add a third map right here, which color-coded the differences between the two maps. And I'm curious whether that would be useful, make things more intuitive, or whether it's information that would not necessarily be needed. If people have opinions, I'm curious. I see different sides of it myself. We also have the ability to integrate camera images. Currently, we have the Oregon Department of Transportation camera images. We don't have Washington yet, hopefully soon. I said earlier in the themes, we have raw data, and we have context, and we have visualizations. This is a direct example of adding context to the data. So you may see a speed line right here, and you can click on the camera to see a visual image of that portion of freeway. So it may allow you to understand, is the speed line color on the map accurate? Does what you see on the camera image, does that look like what the speed line on the map shows? So for example, we have one place in Washington where the speed line is always red. So let's just assume that right here this segment is bright red, which means slow traffic speeds. In this type of map, green means fast speeds and red means slow speeds. So if this were red, we could click on a camera and see if we saw congestion in the camera or not. Another thing we have on this map is the ability to display incidents so that you can correlate a traffic pattern, potentially correlate a traffic pattern with an incident to understand if a slow speed was caused by an incident or weather or what have you. This is a systems page. This is just a zoomed in version and more customizable version of the speed map. So current average speed over comparison period. You can pick a current date and time at the left-hand side, and you can pick a set of days to compare on the right-hand side. And then you also have the ability to step these maps through time periods together. So you can set each map to, say, start at 3 o'clock and then move them to 3:15 and 3:30 and 3:45. So you can see traffic on this map and that map progress over time together. This is currently the days to compare up here. We allow you to compare. You can compare to 5 previous weekdays or 5 previous same day of the week. So today is Friday. I might want to compare to 5 previous Fridays. We're also going to be changing the selectors on this website so that you can customize the days that you compare to. So maybe you can compare to Tuesdays and Thursdays if you want. Okay. A new difference in the portal interface is that we've structured the site by Freeway Subsystem. So this is a page which is supposed to give you information about highways. So this is information, the snapshot taken sometime in the morning on June 10th. And at the top, it gives you some summary stats for that highway. And then at the bottom, it gives you a speed volume plot for speed and volume so far today on that freeway. At the upper right-hand corner up here, you see a little button called Explore. And Explore allows you, the intention of the Explore button is to allow you to dive in further and get more details about this particular highway. So I have I-5 North here. I have some statistics, and I have a plot. And now I click Explore. Whoops. I click Explore, and then I can get more detailed information about this graph. So a couple things. One really interesting thing, as part of the portal project, we interact with this transport group. And part of our contract is that we are supposed to have training sessions or training and feedback sessions to interact with people directly so that they can tell us what they find interesting and not interesting about the website. And we had one this summer, and it was very interesting. And one of the things we learned is that this Explore button was not obvious to people. We thought it was really obvious. We thought, oh, everybody will see Explore, and they'll click on it, and they'll understand that if I want more detail, I should go here. But people weren't finding the Explore button, so we're going to have to redesign it somehow to make it more obvious. The next grouping of pages is the stations pages. So this shows a picture of all stations in the Portland area. Each station is marked with a little pin. In the updated version, we have colored these stations so that northbound stations are colored different from southbound stations and eastbound and westbound so that you can distinguish those types of station. Again, here we have, this is a station map. It shows you all the stations in the area. And you can zoom in to get more detail about the station. So here we have a little bit of text of the station, a map of the station location, and then 2 plots. And this map right now just shows the current station location, but it's being modified so that all stations, so that map will actually show all the stations so that it's easy to navigate upstream and downstream between stations that are located closely together. So it's not visible here, but each one of these plots also has an Explore button. And so you can zoom in to get more details on a particular plot. This is supposed to give you a summary of information for a particular station. And then if I want more detailed, I zoom in, and this is a 2 quantity plot. So you can pick, there's a start date and end date you can select. This is plotting the quantity speed versus volume. At a resolution of 1 hour, we have 20-second resolution, 5-minute resolution, 15-minute resolution, and 1 hour resolution. And you can pick whether you want 1 lane or all lanes. Couple modifications that are happening to this. This just allows a start and an end date, a sequential range. We're also going to allow you to pick certain days of week. So you could say, I want to see only the past 5 Mondays, or I want to see all Tuesdays and Wednesdays in this time range. Another thing to note on this plot in the upper right-hand corner, there's two, I don't know if they're visible, but there's 2 links up in the upper right-hand corner in blue. One is save as image, the other is download data. So you can customize this plot, and then you can download the data in a CSV file so that you can play with that data yourself if you wish. Or you can grab an image of this picture. In working with local agencies, we find that the website is useful, but getting the data is also very, very useful. And a lot of the local consulting firms will use the portal data, manipulate it themselves, and come up with their own plots and graphs and analysis for their reports. So the website's important, but also the accessibility to the data is probably equally as important or more important. A couple of sustainability metrics in the database. I'm going to talk a little bit about emission models in a little bit, but this is work done by Alex Bagazzi. And there's 2 things of note here. One is that we have an initial start on trying to measure some emission metrics in Portal. The top is daily fuel consumption, and I believe that's on I-5. And the bottom is carbon dioxide emissions throughout the day on a set of weekdays, and that is at a particular station. The sustainability metrics are, these sustainability metrics are created by using data stored in Portal and combining it with emissions model. In this case, the emissions model used is Mobile 6, although that should be updated to the MOVES model. This just is to give a short idea of how the Portal data is used. In this slide, I'm really looking more at the Portal data instead of the website. The pictures here are all figures that that agency or consulting company personnel have created, or maybe even some PSU personnel have created using Portal data. So we can compare data across time. The upper right-hand plot is an example of that. So we're just comparing speeds on Portland Boulevard in 2006 versus 2009. And it can measure reliability. In this plot down here, we show speeds at I-5 southbound over a time of day. And the vertical lines show the, I think, standard deviation, or a measure, anyway, it's a measure of reliability. So the bigger the lines, the bigger the variability. So you can see that speeds at I-5 southbound Marine Drive, they're pretty consistent in the overnight periods, but during the middle of the day, there's a lot of, when there's congestion, there's a lot of variability, and that's to be expected. It's been used to measure incident impact. We monitor performance. Like I said, it's going to be heavily used in some of our artismo plans. Finally, inform the traveling public. Like I said, we periodically get calls from the media, and so the data shows up in the newspapers occasionally. Okay. So that's the portal archive and the portal website. The website address is at the end of the talk. You're welcome to anytime. You should go look at it, play with it. If you have questions or comments, let me know. I'm going to switch over now and talk about a couple things that we are working on currently. So we sort of feel like we understand what's going on the freeways. We understand how to measure travel time. We understand how to measure reliability, give or take. There's a reasonable amount of detection on the Portland freeways. We can get some pretty good information out there. Actually, one thing I'll tell you, this is something I found really interesting. I did a travel time study for ODOT about 4 years ago, and we sent cars out to drive on the roads, and we measured the actual travel times of the cars, and then we calculated estimated travel times using the portal data. And I don't know what you guys know about the detection in Portland, but the detectors on the freeways in Portland are only at the on-ramps. So they put the detectors in place specifically for the purpose of the on-ramp metering system. So if there's no on-ramp, there's no detector. And the average spacing is maybe a mile. And I think when we went into this project, we thought there's no way these travel times are going to be accurate. They're going to be so far off, it's unbelievable. And actually, the truth is, they were kind of okay. Give or take, a whole huge, maybe 85% were within 20% error. And studies will show you that at 15 or 20% error, you're doing about as well as a human can do with their own brain. So if you're doing better than 15%, you're doing pretty good. But we were really, really, really shocked that actually our ability to estimate the travel times was pretty good. Why did I say that? I don't know why I said it. Anyway, it's interesting. But I want to tell you one more. As long as I'm here, though, but I got to tell you one more lesson learned from that project. At the very, very, very end of the project, I said to a student, well, why don't, just for fun, why don't you go compare those travel times to the ones that actually show up on the variable message signs? This was like, whatever. Sort of, let's go try. And you know what? They weren't even close. Or they were close. I shouldn't say that. They were close. But there was one, I shouldn't exaggerate that, because most of them were accurate, but there was one segment of travel times that was actually incorrect. And we found that there was actually an issue in the ODOT software with displaying the travel times. And so I found, to me, that was really interesting. I did all this work from this academic standpoint. We run the travel times, we compare to the data we have archived, and we don't even think to check the real system. And so I learned that lesson in a very good way. Okay, so what I was saying is we sort of feel like we understand what's going on the freeways. We give or take know how to measure stuff on the freeways. Now, one of the things we're trying to move towards is we're going to deal with arterials. So we want to report performance metrics on arterials, which may be speeds, travel times. It's actually a question, what's a good performance metric for an arterial? Is travel time right? Average travel time? It's not obvious what the performance measures are. Travel times are so very different. Arterials are so very different from freeways because of the stop and go. You have stoplights. I may drive down the arterial and make all the stoplights. I may have a very good travel time. The person right behind me may have a very slow travel time because they miss all the lights. So exactly how are we going to report these measures? The other thing with arterials is the data is very interesting. It's not like freeway data. Freeway data, we sort of have these detectors, and that's good enough. On arterials, we don't have that type of stuff. We have 3 general types of data. We have transit data. So the buses all record their positions and locations and speeds every time they pass a bus stop. We have information from traffic signals. And we have something that is called match vehicle identification, or MAC address readers, or probe data. So each of these 3 pieces, each of these 3 types of information are going to give us different benefits. The transit data will give us travel time from one end of the corridor to the other, but it's a bus, and a bus doesn't act like a passenger vehicle. So you have to make an adjustment for the bus not acting like a passenger vehicle. But maybe the bus would give you a good estimate of travel time. Also, the buses go, at most every 10 or 15 minutes, so it's not a real frequent source of data. We have signal information. So there are detectors at the signal that can tell us how many cars are passing before that signal, what their speeds are and stuff. But that's a point detection, and it's at a signal. But that data we may get in real time, so it can give us some good real-time, very quickly reported information, but it doesn't give us a real good estimation of travel time because it doesn't tell us anything about what's happening between two signals. The last and newest type of arterial information is matched vehicle identification. This is done with MAC address readers and Bluetooth devices. So you guys all know about this? You put Bluetooth devices at the sides of the road. You put devices at the sides of the road that can read Bluetooth addresses. And then so when I drive by with my phone, actually my phone has Bluetooth turned off so you can't find me, but you know, if I have a Bluetooth headpiece on, or if I have a phone with Bluetooth turned on, it will read the MAC address of that device. And I drive by here and it goes, okay, number 2386 drove past here at 12:01, and then there's another reader down the road, and it captures me again. 2386 went down here at 12:03, so the travel time is 2 minutes. So you guys don't freak out too much. All the MAC addresses are always truncated, and they are truncated at the device, so no one ever is truncated before it's even stored. My best understanding is it's truncated before it's even stored on like the disk at the device, so there's no way to track the information and the data back to a particular person. But we truncate it in such a way that we still have enough information there to get like a 98 or 99% match. So that if we see a number here and we see the same number here, then most likely it's the same person. So this is very good information. It can give us travel times from one end of a corridor to the other end. This is great. Probably the drawbacks are, well, not everybody has a Bluetooth device, although the penetration is increasing. And it requires installing the Bluetooth readers. So, but it's a new interesting data source. So one thing we're looking at is how can we combine these three data sources together to produce good information on the arterials? Or do we need all three data sources? Can we use just one or two or whatever? Okay. We are getting arterial data. This is a mock-up. This is not really in Portal. We do want to get arterial data and incorporate it into Portal. We recently, after many years of trying, finally have access to the City of Portland signal system data. It was an amazing day when we got access. It was fantastic. So now we can get count, speed, and occupancy from system detectors. System detector is the name used to refer to detectors that are several hundred feet upstream of the detectors actually at the signal. We have Bluetooth collection, which is what I talked about on the previous slide. And we're hoping to get some bicycle and pedestrian data. Anyway, our vision is what we want to do is we want to take that arterial data into Portal. And we want to leverage the existing Portal infrastructure and make the arterial data available in Portal like the data is right now. So I can imagine an arterial signal or a location on arterial is similar to a station on a freeway. So I showed you the stations page where you could see all the stations. You could click on a button and you could drill in and get more information about that station. So we want to do the same thing with the arterial data. So we have a map, and those are like all the signal locations in Portland. And then we imagine that you zoom into particular information, and same thing, you get some detailed information about the intersection and a map. We imagine that we have detector data from that intersection. This is from maybe the system detectors. We might have a speed versus time graph for the detector information. We might also show volume over time. So this is what one might do with the detector data in the archive. We also imagine that you have probe data, and so we also expect to display the probe data in the archive. How do you want me to go on time, Chris? So if I go to 45 or so, we're okay? Okay. Okay. So this is the previous slides are just to sort of give you an idea of what we think we might do to incorporate the arterial probe data into our Portal archive. Okay. In terms of arterials, we want to provide different metrics. We might want to provide travel time, reliability, et cetera. One thing that might be very big is to do arterial emissions. So greenhouse gas emissions are a huge deal on freeways. We've tried to start on that. This is some work done on arterial emission estimates. And I have to say, you know, sometimes you write a paper and it gets accepted and you sort of wonder, like, wow, how did that happen? And you got kind of lucky. This paper we wrote, and I was sure this one would get in. So this one I still love. We wrote a paper on this. This is really work led by Alex Bagazzi and Sirisha Koturi, and I'm sure we'll get it in somewhere, but wow, I was surprised. Anyway, you never know. That's the way it goes. Okay, so arterial emissions estimate. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we could do emissions on arterials? So the concept is we're going to, sort of similar to what we do with Portal, we're going to use this probe data. So this stuff we're getting from reading your MAC addresses off your cell phones and your whatever you have. We're going to combine that with the MOVES model, which is an EPA emissions model, and we'll use those two together to estimate arterial emissions. So the way the MOVES model works is the MOVE model has these things called drive schedules. So when you're on a freeway, pretty much, I mean, unless you're in stop-and-go traffic, maybe you're just going down the road at like 40 miles an hour. But when you're on your arterial, you're really stop and go, stop and go. You hit a stoplight, you speed up, you slow down, you speed up, you slow down, you speed up. And so the MOVES model, they understand that, but they have these sort of standard drive schedules, like a drive schedule for a vehicle that's gone an average of 30 miles an hour down an arterial that could be used for any arterial in the whole entire United States. Clearly, that's not very accurate because clearly different arterials will have different travel patterns. If I go 30 miles, if I go an average of 30 miles an hour down Powell Boulevard, my pattern of stop and go may be very different than if I go 30 miles an hour average down down 43 or down 99W. So our concept was we have probe runs along here, and from the probe runs that we did, we can actually get detailed speed information, this speed at this second, this speed at this second, this speed at this second. So can we use the detailed information we have to combine with the model and get better emission estimates? So on the lower right hand here, I was saying that our drive schedules on Powell are going to be very different, or likely to be different from the MOVES drive schedules, which are supposed to be generic. So the black line right here is the MOVES model, assuming a speed of 25 miles an hour. The dotted line is the MOVES model, assuming a speed of 19 miles an hour. And the really dotted line is the average speed profile of the probe runs. Now, to explain this graph, this is sort of a density function of speeds. So it will say that a speed of 30 miles an hour occurred about, I guess this would be 2% of the time, 20% of the time in this model. But it occurred so a speed of 30 miles an hour occurred much more frequently in our probe runs than in either of the MOVES models. On the left-hand side here, we have a picture of carbon dioxide emissions. So we have two things shown on here. One is modeled emissions using the MOVES model, and the dots are emissions using our probe runs with our drive schedules. And the important point to look at on this plot is that, well, first of all, the dots are kind of close to the line. And the other thing to observe is that most of the dots are below the line. So what we're going to try and do, so we probably can't send vehicles out there and get drive schedules for every arterial in the city. That would take too much effort. What we probably could do is what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the MOVES model and we're trying to say, can we do a fixed offset from that MOVES model and get an effective estimate on this arterial? And that we did. Another thing we looked at, I was talking about comparing different data sources. We're trying to understand, can we use bus vehicles as probe vehicles? So can we use bus travel times to estimate real travel times or passenger travel times? So in this figure, there's the crosses are travel times estimated from buses using one methodology. The triangles are travel times estimated from buses using another methodology. And the gray circles are travel times estimated using, or actual travel times from vehicles. And so what we observe in here is that the travel times of the buses using the first method, this cross, versus the MAC travel times. The bus travel times are longer as expected, but it looks like there's a pretty good correlation there. So if there's a pretty good correlation, then we would expect to be able to use bus travel times to perhaps estimate passenger vehicle travel times. Okay. So that's enough for arterial data. Just a couple more slides on some other things we're working on. We'd like to incorporate transit data into Portal. We'd like to have a speed map of travel times using transit data. We might also like to have some information about a transit trip, how many people got on at the stop. This map, in particular, on the bottom here is colored by number of boardings. So different colors represent different numbers of boardings. Bicycle and pedestrian counting, this is one of my dreams. I would really, really like to get some bicycle and pedestrian information to Portal. We'll see. Rob Bertini, who started Portal, his dream was always to have a real-time speed map, our own real-time speed map in Portal. And that happened maybe a year and a half ago. So maybe someday I'll get my bicycle and pedestrian stuff in Portal too. But I don't expect that to happen tomorrow. Two final related projects I just want to mention quickly. One is the Oregon Traffic Safety Data Archive, and this is Chris Monsier's project. Safety is a huge priority at the federal level. Chris has an archive that he'll have to give the details on it, but he has historical crash information from statewide crash database, is that? And this is useful information. We hope to integrate this into Portal because we're seeing this increasing emphasis on safety from the feds, and also because it's useful information. We also are working to get freight data incorporated into Portal. We have some weigh-in-motion data in there right now. We hope to have a weigh-in-motion archive similar to the existing archive. And there's a length-based classification project where we'll actually be able to, on certain freeway corridors, there's infrastructure upgrades will happen, and we'll be able to figure out how long the vehicles are that are traveling. Is it a semi? Is it a long semi, or is it a short delivery truck? So we can get some information about length-based classification. Freight is, as much as maybe we all love to hate the trucks, freights are really important to our economy. And if we can get the freight moving more efficiently, then probably we actually have a huge opportunity to save a lot of emissions and a lot of, the freight people are really motivated to save time and to save gasoline because that's a big expense for them. So any help we can give them to reduce their emissions is, I would think, a good thing. Okay. So I told you a little bit about the background of Portal, why we're building a regional data archive, a little bit about the interface and data sources, and then some of our more recent projects. So that's it. Thank you.
I have the Oprah microphone.
Do you think that the pedestrian and bike information could be collected through the Bluetooth readers eventually?
I had never thought of that. That's a really good question. Well, let me answer that question. Another one. That's interesting. The problem I think you would have is distinguishing between a pedestrian and somebody in a car. So one problem with the Bluetooth data is that we get We get readings. You get a reading from here and here. You get a set of readings from here and a set of readings from here, and then you have to match those two together. So you get a set of numbers, these MAC addresses here and these MAC addresses here, and then you have to match up the numbers. And the Bluetooth readers read most of the people coming by, but they don't get everybody coming up by, because a Bluetooth reader, only cycles so often, and it can only read so many MAC addresses per second. So there's issues in matching the MAC addresses here with the MAC addresses here, and tossing out outliers. And so I think it would come down to the point of, can we, if you looked at the Bluetooth distribution, you sort of have a bimodal distribution. Maybe these are the bikes, and then these are the cars, and then maybe you could use it that way. I think pedestrians are much harder because pedestrians are not as regular. If you're out along not necessarily a bike path, but if you're along a standard bike route, you may get match and match, but pedestrians may not be as regular, and the match window will be much, much larger. But that'd be a very interesting idea. Yeah.
I have a question about, if you go back to one of the slides, carbon dioxide emission versus time.
Yeah.
There was a curve there. I have a question about that.
Okay.
In my opinion, it is directly proportional, but you have a curve instead of a straight line. Not this. Please go further up. This is not the slide I'm talking about.
Oh.
There is another one which you have a curve. Yes.
Okay.
If you see on the left, carbon dioxide emission versus the speed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is proportional, and that should not be a curve, but a straight line, and the couple of dots you try to match, that may be outliers, and then that should not be a curve. This is my opinion, but can you shed some more light to justify the curve?
The curve is based on the MOVES model, which is produced by the EPA. So this is not something we developed. It's something that's been developed at the federal level. And so I know that we're using that model, but I don't know the justification for that model.
No, my point was, suppose somebody made a mistake, so we just follow it, or we're going to point it out to them saying that this is wrong?
Well, certainly if we find there's a mistake, we should try and point it out. I would also argue that I have a high level of trust in a model that's published every couple of years from the EPA, unless there's direct. And I would have a high level of trust in that model. It's a standard model it's not something that was developed at a particular location. It's a nationwide.
I mean, one reason you wouldn't expect linearity is at low speed you have vehicles stopping for part of the time, reaccelerating. So this is average speed. At low speed rates, you have vehicles coming to a stop and reaccelerating. So it's not quite the same thing as a constant speed of 30 or a constant speed of 10.
Yeah, and the y-axis is grams per mile. So slower vehicles take longer to travel the distance.
Yeah, either one.
All right. I have a question. Do you use, like if you search in Google and you're like, I want to get here to here, is that travel time data estimated with Portal's data? And further, or could you use, the estimates from Portal, like real time, say there's an incident, is it possible to integrate that into Google's system where, if there's an accident, it'll tell you how long it'll take for you to do that?
Okay, good question. The traffic information in Google Maps, as best I understand, is created something called crowdsourcing. And so on your phone, like on my little iPhone, I have a Google Maps application. And if I turn that Google Maps application on and I use it to find directions or to look at traffic speeds, my position information is actually reported back to Google. And Google uses those position reports, just like I talked about. We use the MAC address probe reports to calculate the travel information. Different companies do different things. There's also an INRIX travel service. INRIX uses the data from ODOT that we get. They also have contracts with companies like taxis and freight companies to get position information from the taxi and freight companies. And then they combine the ODOT data with the taxi and freight data. So no, Portal data is not used in Google. They use their own crowdsourced data in Google. I'm not sure Google's interested in our data. Our speed maps are, we have done maybe something similar in that our speed maps are based on Google Maps. So we use the Google Maps API to produce those speed maps. So you can see the live speed on those speed maps. But again, there's a lot of people that provide live speed information. That's not really our goal. Our goal is to be more of an archive in support of the local agencies. But it's a really good question. So, yep.
So one of the things I'm curious about with the MAC address data is, does this, are you archiving or providing trip data? Like, what are people doing? Are people going on 5-mile trips, 10-mile trips?
You mean like OD data? There's not enough. Right now, I guess you could potentially do that type of information, I think, clearly with the MAC address readers. There's not enough penetration there's not enough readers around right now to really provide that data. So there's we did a temporary installation on Powell. I think there were some down on 99W for a while. And so there's 3 or 4 installations of the Bluetooth readers going up around the city. We're going to sort of see how they work. Do we get good data out of them? How closely together do we need to place the readers? Do we need them every block, or can buy a mile apart? And I think once that sort of sorts out, we'll see whether Bluetooth readers are put all over the city. If they're put all over the city, then maybe you could do that type of information. If we use them for particular major arterials, then I think that information is harder to get just because you don't have enough information. Also, plus the matching problem gets way worse. If you're trying to match here to here, you got to match a whole bunch of different places. But you could probably do it. So, yeah.
As an alternative to depending on the TriMet buses, have you talked with other fleet vehicles? Like I was thinking like Zipcar. They probably have GPS on all of their vehicles.
No, I have not talked with Zipcar. I know that we could think about it. I know that companies like INRIX, I don't know if they do Zipcar or not. My understand INRIX won't tell you exactly where they get their data from, but I think they get it from like freight companies and such who also have program information. The problem with the Zipcar might be a privacy concern, that you need to somehow make sure that data was anonymized. If I were the Zipcar company, I would be a little bit concerned about providing that data. The freight companies are always very concerned about providing this data back to INRIX, for example, because the truckers don't want anybody coming back and saying, oh, well, you were here at this time and here at this time and the speed limit's 60 and there's no way you can, you can get information out of this. You can get information out of the probe data that maybe you don't want everyone to know. So I would assume that an issue with the Zipcar is, if we could overcome the privacy issues, it'd be great. But, yeah.
This is a bit of a follow-on question to the privacy issue that you just brought up. Has the media gotten wind of the fact that you're collecting partial MAC data, and is that data capable of validating ideas such as the 20-minute neighborhood for cyclists or walkers and things of that nature? Habitual sort of, I haunt a certain area of town. I'm not sure.
What is, okay, so let me answer the first one and then let me answer the first one and ask you more about the second. The media in general, the Bluetooth collection is something that's well known. The media across the country know that people are doing this. I'm not sure I've seen an article in the Portland media, but I don't see it as a huge issue. The addresses are truncated. You can't trace it back to a person, and that's been fairly well addressed. And I don't think it's a big secret that this is happening. It's a common thing that's happening across the United States. It's just not just here in Portland. Indiana's done a whole bunch of it, so it's nothing. I don't think it's anything too shocking.
Explain more to me what you mean by the 20-minute neighborhood.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we had another seminar here based on bikeability in the 20-minute neighborhood. I think it was 20 minutes, it might have been 40, but I don't have my notes with me at the moment. And the idea was that most people will spend the majority of their time within 20 minutes cycling. And since you're collecting specific data, even though it's not traceable to an individual, my question would be, in theory, the 20-minute neighborhood is not fact, as far as I know. Would this data be helpful in validating that data?
Again, I think it has to do with the amount of Bluetooth readers you have out there. If you have enough data, if you have enough readers out there, I guess you could, you could do that as MAC addresses stay pretty stable.
The question is, do you see your data being used for something as different as that?
I've never even thought about that. I haven't thought about that, nor have I actually heard that idea before. So, I mean, maybe in the future. Right now, what people are really focusing on it for is arterial performance. What is the travel speed down this arterial? And that's where it's really being seen. And in that case, we just have a few detectors along a set of arterials, in which case there's not that information. The detectors are, I don't know, I mean, the expensive ones are about $5,000 each. The cheaper ones are maybe $1,000 or $2,000. It's actually not very much. To make a detector, if you want to do it cheaply, you just go buy a laptop and get a little Bluetooth dongle and put it in there and write a few programs, and you have a detector. Yeah?
I guess I'm very curious about the Bluetooth collection, how you're distinguishing modes of travel. Are you doing it by speed? Because I was thinking a pedestrian could get on a bus and be on that for a while and then get back off.
So that's an issue with the Bluetooth. So I think that's just an issue with, I had a slide up there where I was saying these are the different data sources, and each data source has their problems. And this is one of the issues with the Bluetooth data, that you have to do some filtering. There's some filtering published. Kittleson, who's working with us, has done a filtering algorithm. They throw out it's outlier detection type thing. It's an issue, and I would say it's partially resolved in research, but there's probably still more to be done, especially if we want to try and capture pedestrians or bicyclists. But you're right, there could be somebody on the bus, and I worry about a bus with like 30 people with Bluetooth on it going past a Bluetooth reader, and then we're like, wow, now we know what the travel time is on this corridor, but it's actually just a bus went past. So there's a whole lot of issues like that there. Open questions. Chris looks like he's ready to talk.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask if maybe you could get some sort of grant funding to have people voluntarily want to put some sort of device to travel, like metro travel times. It's like recruiting volunteers.
You definitely can do that. I think, unless I'm wrong, the bike projects in town have done that type of thing. I've known other research areas, I think, when there's, they will give out people like little toll tag readers, and, they give those out to people who are willing to take them. So that's definitely, it's definitely done. I'm not sure if you want to do it as a standard for reporting travel times to the public, but as like a research mechanism, it's definitely an idea. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, last question.
I have a kind of similar question, but how can users upload either data that they've manipulated, or if they have another source that they're doing? Is there some way that they can kind of contribute to what's already existing?
Another good question. We've not, right now we get data primarily from the local agencies, and we have not really developed an upload mechanism. I think it's a really interesting idea. It'd be very good to have a set of data sources. And in addition to data sources, it'd be very good if we made it so that if you did analysis with the portal data, you could upload our results back so that everybody could be shared. I mean, there's some issues with that, in that I'm sure your data is great, but we don't. There has to be. I'm totally joking, but you have to do. If you allow, my data is bad, so whatever. You know what? Mark Hallenbach at Wisconsin. We talk about data. He's a data quality guy, and he has this joke. He always says that we use the best available Right. Right? So this is our, okay, so data is very noisy. I think it's actually a really fantastic idea. I may have to go think about that because it's a great idea to allow people to contribute stuff. I guess quality control is a little bit of an issue, but that's a really good idea. Did you have something you wanted to say? All right.
Go ahead, Dave. I'm not that.
Go ahead.
Actually, very related to the previous one is most of this data is stuff you're gathering on a continuous basis. But there are these short-term studies, where somebody will instrument cars for a while or put GPS on bikes or something. And it's an interesting question about how you can it's the same thing of maybe not uploading, but letting people combine or showing these episodic data sets as compared to these sort of continuous data sets.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. We don't, right now, most of the data set we have, we sort of intend to do on a real-time or on a continuous basis, but there's absolutely a place for these periodic studies because they're very valuable also. Lots of stuff for me to think about. Okay.
All right, before we thank Kristin for today, the presentation next week is Housing 101, Demystifying the Subsidized Housing System for Transportation Planners. So with that, thank you, Kristin. And as always, make sure I got your question. I got your